So, hello everyone, and welcome back to STW Sports. And today, I'm joined by Justin, Beattie, and Peter. Well, welcome, guys. Watford, of course, started the season with a 3-2 victory over Aston Villa in the opening game a couple of weeks ago. Justin, please talk us through your thoughts on that game. You were there as well, of course, so it must have been a great moment as you're back in the Premier League.
Absolutely, yeah. Wasn't expecting that result, to be fair, especially when I saw the lineup and the formation. It was curious. Cathcart at right back and various sort of key players I thought were missing. But what do I know? It was one of those games where the result didn't really tell the story. It looked like a close result. It really wasn't. We dominated that game. Very good goal by Villa at the end, and then a penalty made it 3-2. But I thought we were absolutely superb that day. I thought we were, worthy of being in the Premier League, to be fair.
So, Peter, what have been your thoughts on the season in general so far? Obviously, only just come back up. Fans are back in the stadiums as well. How do you think Watford have adapted to life back in the top flight?
Well, I think it's been interesting because we've had a whole influx of new players. In the Aston Villa game, we had two who made a real big difference. Emmanuel Dennis up front, which was, again, another surprise. People weren't necessarily expecting to see him there, but he had a fabulous game and partnered with Ismail Assar. But we also had the Slovakian midfield player, 34-year-old, a grand old man, guy called Juraj Kuška, who was simply unbelievable. And he really turned it around. Unfortunately, he went off after about 70 minutes. And thereafter, we had the collapse that Justin just mentioned there. And we saw that kind of carry on in the Brighton game. That was just a turgid performance. It really was. We ended up with three quite diminutive midfield players in there, hardworking but diminutive, and got overrun by Brighton. And also we got outthought by Graham Potter, who played a 3-4-3 against us and just used the wings far better than we did, and we got our just desserts. And then we had a really good performance against Tottenham, but basically their quality saw out at the end. But it's been encouraging.
Yeah, Justin, the big news this week at Watford, I guess, is that club legend Troy Deeney has departed the club after 11 years. Obviously, Troy Deeney, speaks for himself, how good he's done at the club. But what were your thoughts on him going to Birmingham City?
I'm glad it was Birmingham City he went to because he's a Birmingham fan. There were a number of other clubs that were sort of muted. Birmingham is perfect. I can't say anything but positive things about Troy Deeney. He's been a fantastic servant for Watford Football Club. He doesn't owe us anything at all. And he realised, I think, that there wasn't going to be that many first-team opportunities for him going forward. And by mutual consent, he's gone to Birmingham City. Good luck, Troy. Thank you very much for all the times you've given us. Perfect example of a loyal servant to a football club, in my opinion.
Yep. Peter, where do you stand on that anyway? Troy Deeney going to his boyhood club, Birmingham City, obviously provided you with many great memories, not to mention, of course, the 2013 playoff semi-final against Leicester. Where do you stand on Deeney anyway?
Well, I think Deeney has never forgotten the fact that the club stood by him and the fans stood by him, and that was that particular season. And whilst it still did take us after that particular goal, which everybody remembers, another 3 years to get up, he scored 20 goals or over 20 goals in 3 consecutive seasons and took us up. And he was, he's actually been, if you look at it factually, he's been the most successful captain we've ever had because he's captained us through, 5 years in the Premiership. We'd only had a prolonged stay like that once, which was under Graham Taylor, and that had a number of different captains. So, he has done brilliantly. Going to Birmingham, it just appeals to the romantic in every football fan that he would go home and play that there. And I think when Birmingham play, they'll have an awful lot of fans in South West Hertfordshire this year.
Yeah, one thing you guys have had a lot of in the last few years is managers. Justin, do you have a particular standout manager you've seen at Watford in the last decade or so?
Probably our current manager, actually. I can't believe how he turned the team around. I'm trying to think the last decade. Yeah, no, probably Xisco. I think is probably the standout manager. Before he came under Ivic, lots of sideways passing, lots of attritional games, 0-0s, 1-0s, very, very boring football to watch, really not entertaining at all. And he seemed to have, lit a fire under the players and got them playing. So I hope this continues in the Prem because I've got, at this stage, a lot of faith in him. It remains to be seen. We don't particularly look after our managers very well. So Hopefully, fingers crossed, he's going to do it for us in the Prem as well.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Peter? Who's your favourite manager at the club in the past decade or so?
Well, it'll probably make any Sheffield United fan choke if they hear this, but Jokanovic, when we had him and he took us up the first time, he is everything that so far we haven't yet seen from Cisco. Cisco Munoz, our current manager, as Justin said there, creates a lovely environment, gets everybody really wanting to play for him. Jokanovic was this tactician par excellence. He would change the shape in the middle of games. Literally 25 minutes in, he'd be pulling a player off, bringing another player on and changing it for him. And he was always effective, to the point even where we played Rotherham, who were bottom of the table one year, and he played 4 centre-backs. And it was an awful game to watch, but he just said that they're difficult. And I backed us to score. We got the 1-0 and we never saw that again. He would always do things per game. I think he's a really solid coach, and hopefully Sheffield United can pull up as well.
Yeah, obviously with Watford having a few years in the Premier League, Justin, do you have a favourite result from your time in the top flight, would you say? You've had some big wins over the top teams in recent years as well. So any result for you that stands out in particular?
Yeah, definitely. It's got to be the 3-0 win at home against Liverpool in 2019, because Liverpool, up until that point, were unbeaten. We were looking dreadful. I mean, we really were looking poor. And we just pulled out a game from nowhere, took it to Liverpool. And, yeah, it was, the 3-0 result was right. We were the better team on the day. So that one definitely sticks out in my mind.
Same with you, Peter. Would you agree with that, or you got a different one in mind?
I think everybody's gonna lean on that. We did Liverpool again 3-0 in our first season back up under Quique Sanchez Flores. We had a game against Aston Villa where again Troy scored to make it 3-2, and we basically did the double over Aston Villa. And of course, with his Blues connection, that was a particularly nice moment for him as well. So no, it's been a lot of great moments in the Prem.
In terms of promotions, guys, you guys have been promoted quite a lot over the past 2 decades. I believe it's 4 times now, back to the Premier League at least. What's your favourite one that stands out for you? You've got some good memories in there.
My favourite promotion? Well, it's probably, funny enough, it's the one from the old 3rd division to the old 2nd division under Graham Taylor in 97. There was just a magic about that team. They just didn't look as if they were going to ever be beaten. They just looked good. There was a real spirit amongst the players. Obviously, Graham Taylor was back as well. So I appreciate that's not in the last decade or whatever. But yeah, no, that was probably my favourite promotion that I can remember, that one.
What about yourself, Peter?
I think any of the Graham Taylor promotions are just kind of shrouded in glory. But for me, it would probably be the more modern one, the 2015, the one that I just mentioned around with Jokanovic, where we do get an awful lot of grief about the managers, and it's fair play, because let's face it, we go through them like most families go through toilet rolls. But we had 4 managers in that particular season and still got promotion, and it hopefully made a few people think, well, actually, you know what, maybe the kind of hiring a manager, give him everything, bring him in his backroom staff, and then recruit loads of players, then fire him 8 months or 2 years later isn't necessarily the way to go forward. Maybe we've got something here. And it was a great year playing great football. 2015.
Obviously, barring Troy Deeney would be the obvious answer. Do you guys have a standout player from Watford, like in history? Who's your favourite?
Do you want to go first, Peter?
I always describe, when you're talking about Watford, there's 2 players who are first name only. If you say the word Troy or you say the word Luther in and around Watford, you're not referencing Martin Luther King or anybody else. It is Luther Blissett and it is Troy Deeney. And 2 more different strikers actually you couldn't really find, because if you put them in the same era, one would be playing off the other. But one is literally a statesman. Like, if you're not familiar with Luther Blissett, he was there for the first era when we came up with Graham Taylor. He came back for the second era with Graham Taylor on the coaching staff. So all of that Graham Taylor era, if you look at any photograph, pretty much it's got Luther next to him at some point. So Luther alongside Troy, most certainly.
And what about yourself, Justin?
For me, there's another player known by really one word only, and that's Jono. Richard Johnson. I used to love watching Richard Johnson play. He just had real sort of enthusiasm. He always scored some spectacular long-range shots. We've been lucky enough to talk to him on the Do Not Scratch Your Eyes podcast, What a lovely man. He's an absolute legend. An Australian player, I think probably our only Australian player that we've had. So for me, Luther, Troy, obviously, but if you're going to go slightly left field, for me, Jono, one of my favourite players of all time.
The other nice thing about Richard Johnson was he said he scored all of those long-range goals because he was too knackered to get into the box.
Yeah, too lazy to get out the pitch, yeah.
Right, guys, we're going to talk transfer news now, and obviously barring the Troy Deeney one we've already mentioned, what have you made of Watford's transfer window this summer, and do you think it's enough to, do well in the Premier League this season?
Personally, it's been interesting. I think we might have left ourselves slightly exposed in the centre of defence. I would have liked to have seen another centre-half coming in. Again, the midfield maybe is a little bit lacking now that we've lost Chalabar and Hughes. But on the whole, I'm massively encouraged by the transfer window. I think it's been brilliant. We've got rid of the deadwood that we've been needing to get rid of for quite some time. We've brought in some exciting looking players. We didn't lose Saar, which I think is key. So on the whole, I'm very excited by the transfers, but now they've got to perform because that's who we've got now. These are our players, so it's up to these guys to put in a shift for us. Fingers crossed. I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah, do you echo that, Peter?
Yeah, I think it was important that we brought in Sissoko, especially as we said, having lost or having gone on to lose both Chalabar and Hughes. I think the quality isn't the question. The question is around the depth that we have in the squad. So, that Aston Villa to that Brighton game really showed that. One game, we were all over them in midfield. And the second game, we had an unrecognisable midfield for a couple of injuries, and then we were gone. So the question is with the depth. So we will see. But we've strengthened up front. We've strengthened in midfield. A bit more strengthening at the back would have made us all pleased.
And finally, guys, a prediction for where you think Watford will finish this season.
Well, on the Do Not Scratch Your Eyes podcast, my colleague and I, Carl, went through every single fixture when they came out, and between us we were going, no, we'll be all right there. At the end of it, we came to 61 points, which put us somewhere around 7th. Now that is not going to happen, but I also equally don't think we're looking down the barrel of relegation necessarily. I think personally we're looking at a fairly comfortable 14th, somewhere around there, but I certainly don't think we're going to get relegated.
And what about yourself, Peter?
I'm older, entirely more cynical, and I will bite your arm off for 17th now. But that says more about me than our hopes. Yeah, no, I think 16th, 15th would be great.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, that's all we've got time for anyway, guys. But a quick reminder to everyone to please check out the Do Not Scratch Your Eyes podcast, which is hosted by Justin, and also the YouOrnsTV, which is ran by Peter. But thank you very much for joining me, guys, and good luck to Watford for the rest of the season.
Thanks for having us on, Sam.